Are you guys ready? Because we're going to dive in. Deep dive today. Baldur's Gate 3. I'm finally reviewing the game. This is after all those months of, well, 3 years technically of early access, but really hard the last 2 months leading up to the launch. And then since then, I mean, every single day. I think I've missed one day up to this recording, and that was the day that Cyberpunk 2077 launched, the 2.0 update. I was like, you know what? I've got like 4 videos for Baldur's Gate 3 in the bank for the next few days. I'm good to go, and I did skip a day. But apart from that one day, I have played every single day, and it is an absolute masterpiece of a game. I want to just kind of leave all this on the table here because I don't think I've ever done a review before I actually finished the game. And the reason I'm doing it before I actually have finished the game is because we're like 2 months out from the launch. And I told people when I started my Druid playthrough, I was like, it's probably going to take me about 3 months to get through the game because I'm balancing that with Starfield, and then Cyberpunk's coming, and so we're blending the three together. But on top of that, I've also got my Sorcerer playthrough, who's going to he's in the Underdark right now, so I would assume that by the time I wrap up Act 3 and wrap up my Druid playthrough, I'll be getting probably pretty deep into Act 2 with my Sorcerer, and then I'm going to switch over and I'll be streaming the Sorcerer. And then, of course, we have the multiplayer stuff, and I've got a Rogue and a Ranger Beastmaster coming down the road at some point. So it's not a game that I'm putting down anytime soon. And that's what's led me to want to go ahead and give a review, even though I haven't beat the game. Now, for some of you, you're immediately going to say, well, if you haven't played the whole Act 3, you can't make a review because this, that, or the other. You do you. You do you. I know that this is, for me, this is the game of the year. I love Starfield a lot, and I really love Cyberpunk 2077, the 2.0 update, and everything they're doing. They're all great games, but Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take my Game of the Year slot. It's just got too many really cool things going on, and it has its issues. There are some bugs, and there's still performance issues in Act 3. I actually literally just patched patch 3, or as I was waiting to record this video. So I'm jumping in this afternoon. I'm going to be playing some offline with my Sorcerer, and it's the patch 3 stuff, and I want to take it out. Take a look at that, and then I'll be back, middle of next week with the Druid streams once we get past the Phantom Liberty launch. This is just, despite all the little quirks that are in Act 3, this is the best CRPG I've played. Ever. That slot for a long time was held by Baldur's Gate 2, and there were games that came close. Dragon Age Origins, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, both came really close. But Baldur's Gate 2 always managed to stay at the top, and then Larian Studios came along and dropped this on us, and it has proven to be the coolest CRPG I've ever played. And I don't know that I've ever seen a game that takes so many of the nuances of tabletop and actually does it well in a digital space. I have seen games that have made good attempts. A perfect game would be like Solasta, Crown of the Magister. If you have not played Solasta, get on it. That game is awesome, and it uses 5th edition D&D rules, which are the same rules that Larian is using for Baldur's Gate 3. And they do a very similar turn-based game, but they use the grid pattern. But you see all your dice rolls. It's just slightly, the UI is a little bit different. And Solasta made a very good attempt, but it was still lacking a lot of the scope and the scale that Larian was able to do by having a team that was 10 times bigger. So some of the things that I can think of are like throwing shoes or inanimate objects at enemies, or picking up player characters and chucking them at enemies, or being able to shapeshift into a dozen different creatures and go into small forms and go into tunnels and find secret entrances, or go into gaseous form and check it out, or use the fly spell to go over there, or the misty step, and the verticality of Baldur's Gate 3, where you've got height advantage for spells and archery and all this other stuff, and then you're using this entire 3D map for combat where you've got verticality to think about as well as the horizontal layer. So you've got this entire 3D battlefront, and this was the first game that I have ever been willing to put myself through, turn-based, and come out the other end going, that wasn't that bad. Because even Solasta, I like Solasta a lot, but the turn-based was still nagging at the back of my mind. And because I like the pause-based versions, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 coming to mind, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. I like the pause-based as opposed to the, turn-based. And despite that fact, I love Baldur's Gate 3. It's an amazing game. It has a ton of strategy to it. All the things we just mentioned with the verticality and the way you can do things are enhanced by things that Larian brought to the table with their previous games, which are like using the environment to your advantage and having water that could become ice or electrified, and having blood that could be done the same thing to because it's a liquid, then having noxious fumes and gases and grease spells and web spells and things that can be set on fire, and explosive barrels and grenades that you can launch along with flasks and all these other things. Add to that melee and ranged abilities and cool abilities on all sorts of weapons if you have the proficiency with those things, and then cool things on armor if you have the proficiencies with those things, layered on top of spell casting and the complexities of that system, and having all of these different abilities in the game, hundreds of spells. And then on top of all of that, somehow managing to seamlessly allow for mouse and keyboard and controller support on the same device in a way that very few companies do. Then you have beyond that. Oh, I'm just going to keep going, everybody. We're 7.5 minutes in, and I haven't yet stopped with all of the cool shit that this game has in it. So then we have the fact that they built a motion capture cinematic studio from the ground up for this game, and they pulled it off because you don't have stiff yesterday-looking graphics. You have a game that looks... It's not as polished as, say, something you might see from like Final Fantasy 16 or something. That's a very different linear experience. Jedi Survivor is another good one. God of War is another good one, where the focus is primarily on the visuals and they don't have all this complex engineering going behind the scenes. With Baldur's Gate 3, have all this complex engineering going behind the scenes, but they still managed to pull off really amazingly well done characters with motion capture and voice acting, and a talented cast that were in the studio for weeks on end in the costumes, in the capture costumes, doing all of it, not just the voices but the motion capture, and then what they did with the lighting and the shading and everything, and the makeups and skin textures, and then all the hairstyles you can choose, and all the different races that they have in the game, and the sub races they have in the game, and all that, like looking at the Dragonborn and all the crazy things you can do to make those characters look unique, on top of the tieflings and all the ways that you can make the tieflings look unique, and then you've got your variants of elves and gnomes and all these other things. And on top of all of that, you have this music composition, this soundtrack that is like probably... I really think... I haven't done my soundtrack episode yet. That's coming down the pipeline. But I kind of feel like this soundtrack has jumped into my top 3 soundtracks of all time. It's a banger of a soundtrack. Matter of fact, I could probably say with certainty that if we're talking only about RPGs, CRPGs, this is the best soundtrack I've ever heard for a CRPG. Second only to the Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale games, because those games also have amazing Pillars of Eternity 1, Pillars of Eternity 2, Dragon Age Origins. Like these games have all had great music, but Baldur's Gate 3 has an amazing score. And I say all of that to say that this game has not only all of that, but the permutations that they talked about, the 17,000, I'll never see all of them. I'll see a few hundred through various playthroughs. I've already seen dozens through various playthroughs. It's been an absolute treat to see the way that they've done the nostalgia and the legacy of the series. Such an honor, because that was one of the things I loved about Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, was because you could go back and do it over and over and over and get a slightly different experience each time, depending on who was in your party, what choices you made. And they've taken that and scaled it up. And on top of that, we still have the multiplayer component, which is there as well. So I think that at the end of the day, I mean, the only nitpicks that I have are the turn-based thing, and I will still always prefer the 6-person party system. I just do. I like having 6 people in my party. It's just always been my preferred method. They did a great job here with 4 people in your party and all the complexities of the combat system they have in place. Exceptionally well done. Exceptionally well done. I don't think there's been a single moment in this game where I have felt like there was fan service being done or something didn't feel polished. Even the times when I've seen bugs, I've been willing to just sort of shake it off, because the rest of the experience is so fucking amazing that I'm not going to let an animation sequence that aired out of turn, as an example, or a frame drop when I drink a potion because of the VFX. Those are little things that I've noticed along the way, and there's other little things, but those do not detract from this being an absolutely amazing experience. Now, I'm 100+ hours into my main character's campaign, and if you want to consider all the time I spent in early access, we're probably in the ballpark of like 500 hours now between all the different characters and playthroughs. So I've spent a lot of time with this game, and I feel like I can rightfully say that it is a masterpiece of a game, even though I technically haven't finished the main campaign yet. And the reason I want to do that is because I just want to get it off my chest. I've been playing this game for months, a couple months now, and it's just so amazing. And every day that I come and stream it is just a blessing. And all of the guides that we've done, I've done almost 400 videos on Baldur's Gate 3 alone, the vast majority of which have happened in 2023. Like, I did a few leading up to the game. Streamed the entire first time I did the Rogue when the early access hit back in 2020. When my channel only had like 80 followers. Like, it's, this game has always been here for me, and it's been an amazing experience. It's been a great journey to see it grow through early access, and this is one of the areas where I will say that I'm going to be doing my Starfield review after this. Maybe it might be tomorrow or the day after. It depends on when I air it. But that's the second game I've ever played where I'm going to be doing a review before I've actually finished the game, because I'm already over 150 hours in that game in my first playthrough, and I have at least another I would argue there's another 200 to 300 hours ahead of me before I finish my first playthrough of that game, and then I'm going into the New Game Plus mode. So I'm going to get the rest of this year, and like, as much as I've played Skyrim, half a dozen times over the years, and Oblivion half a dozen times over the years, and Morrowind half a dozen times over the years, I will be playing Starfield half a dozen times over the years. So I'm going to be doing a review of that, at 150 hours in, because it's an amazing experience. But I love, like with Baldur's Gate 3, I can look at, studios, or some studios, Bethesda, Larian, CD Projekt Red, some companies are still willing to make that to make the risk, to take the plunge, to make a deep, rich RPG. I would also say it looks like Dragon's Dogma coming up looks pretty amazing as well. I just caught wind of that the day I'm recording this, actually. There are some companies who are willing to put in money to make an amazing RPG experience. Not every company and not every publisher is all about, and there's nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. I don't have anything against microtransactions as a rule, but some companies over rely on them and just make these games. They monetize it first, and once they have a monetization strategy, they wrap a game around it. And I just feel like those types of games, people don't play those for more than the 40, 50 hours that you're going to get out of it. Whereas when you create a game where you just give the people a richly, deeply designed title with a couple hundred minimum hours of entertainment involved. 200 to 300 hours in the main campaign. If you do a completionist journey, when you can provide that to people, Witcher 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate 3, these companies, Starfield, who have been releasing these games in 2023, I feel like we may be making a return to a golden age of game development once again. Now, I can't make that prediction with any certainty, but I can say that Larian Studios and these other companies who have come out in recent months with these amazing, RPGs that have hundreds of hours of entertainment, and then the ability to replay the games and get thousands upon thousands upon thousands of variations. That is something that every company is going to be watching. And if they're not inspired by that, they'll be intimidated by that. Because the people have shown that we are more than happy to spend all of our money on games like Baldur's Gate 3 because they provide us with an amazing RPG experience, an immersive world that we can get into and spend hundreds of hours without being pelted with fucking microtransactions and cosmetics and all of these things, these gimmicks to try to run the game as a service. Just make good games, everybody. Larian Studios have proven that if you just make good games, the people will come, they will play it, they will knock it out of the park in terms of reviews. And Larian, you did the impossible, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where you guys go with your next game. It may be a Divinity Sin game, or you may get convinced to do a sequel to Baldur's Gate 3. I personally would vote for Larian Studios to come out and do the Icewind Dale 3 because you did such a good job with Baldur's Gate 3. I would love it if you could somehow make that dream a reality. Get the license to Icewind Dale 3 and have Larian Studios make that, because I would sacrifice I would sacrifice my firstborn, who I don't have, but still, that's a I would love to see that game come to fruition by the time I'm 50 or in my early 50s and be able to sink my teeth into that as I head into retirement. Um, this is a great game, everybody. Baldur's Gate 3, my game of the year, probably my game of the decade. We're only 3 years into the decade, but I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to be as immersive or as richly detailed as this. But we don't know. There's still 7 years ahead of us. But for now, get out there, play it. Don't yawn like I just did. Get out there, play it, have fun. Play it with your friends. The multiplayer is amazing. Cross save. Play it on your PS5. Play it on your PC. I've been playing it on PC. It's coming to the Xbox Series X. As soon as it hits the Xbox, I'm getting it for the Xbox, and I'm going to start playing it there instead of my PC. It's just a great game, everybody. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams happen at 11 a.m. We do a lot more than just Baldur's Gate 3, so check out all the other playlists. Join the Discord. Links are below. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, everybody.